Something about this game feels different. Not just bigger, not just prettier, different. And if you look closely, you start to notice things that almost no other open world game is doing right now. Cities that look too clean for medieval fantasy. Massive landscapes designed to be seen from the sky. There's one design decision in Crimson Desert that completely changes how players experience the world, and almost no one is talking about it yet. A world packed with systems that seem built around curiosity instead of checklists. And the more I analyzed the environment art in Crimson Desert, one question kept coming back. Is this what next generation open worlds are supposed to look like? Because from an environment artist's perspective, this world is doing a lot of things differently. While many Western open world games are starting to feel like huge lists of chores, some Eastern studios are quietly pushing ambition in a completely different direction. And one of the best examples of that might be Crimson Desert. Because when you start analyzing this game from an environment art and world design perspective, it becomes clear that this might be one of the most technically ambitious worlds we've seen in years, if not ever. Huge cities, massive biome diversity, dynamic weather systems, dragon flight, gliding, floating islands, and a world that feels designed not around checklists, but curiosity. And today, we're going to break down why Crimson Desert's world feels so next gen from the perspective of AAA environment art and open world design. At first glance, this looks like a beautiful open world, but there's something very different happening with how space is used here. One thing that immediately stands out when watching gameplay of Crimson Desert is scale and diversity. Within minutes, you can see rocky coastlines, dense forests, snowy mountain ranges, massive cities, battlefields, floating islands above landscapes. This kind of biome density is extremely difficult to pull off in AAA production. From an environment art perspective, this means building multiple visual ecosystems that all feel believable while still belonging to the same world. To achieve this, studios typically rely on several core techniques. Biome-specific asset library. Each biome requires its own vegetation sets, terrain materials, rock formations, architecture, atmospheric lighting profiles. But what's impressive here is how distinct each region feels without breaking world cohesion. This usually means heavy use of shared color palettes, consistent material response, global lighting calibration. The world feels varied but artistically unified. That's not easy. Most open worlds expand horizontally, but this game seems to be doing something else entirely, and it changes how you move through it. Now here's something really interesting. Most medieval fantasy games follow a very specific visual formula: dirty, ruined, covered in grime and decay. But Crimson Desert does something very different. Many of its buildings are surprisingly clean. Stone surfaces look maintained. Cities look functional. Architecture feels inhabited and active, not abandoned. And from an environment art perspective, that choice is fascinating. Because instead of relying heavily on damage and grunge layers to sell realism, the artists rely more on material quality. Stone materials have strong microsurface detail, realistic roughness variation, subtle edge wear. Instead of full destruction, you get controlled aging. Many buildings have clean silhouettes, readable structure logic, clear stone block construction, which makes the cities feel engineered rather than decayed. The architecture also feels slightly different from Western medieval fantasy. There are hints of Asian architectural influence, more geometric layouts, stronger vertical silhouettes, which helps give the world a distinct visual identity. Large medieval cities are one of the hardest things to build in open world games, not because of art, because of performance and production scale. To make cities feel believable, you need thousands of modular assets, layered architecture, dense props, believable street layouts, and most importantly, hierarchy. Good city design always include landmark structures, massive castles, cathedrals, towers. These guide the player's navigation and create visual anchors. Mid-scale density, markets, housing blocks, bridges, plazas, these create visual rhythm inside the city. Micro detail, barrels, cloth, props, street clutter, these are what make environments feel lived in. Crimson Desert appears to combine all three layers extremely well. On a technical level, their game engine seems to handle tessellation very well. As we can see, it's used absolutely everywhere. It's most probably displayed with a distance-based system to keep things optimized. We can notice that the buildings being mostly clean certainly serves a purpose of optimization. There seems to be only a few decals, some foliage overgrowth, and very little material blending. Let's take a look at this screenshot. While there is some grime on some buildings, these surfaces are immaculate, which is unusual for a fantasy medieval game. If you're trying to break into AAA environment art, I put together a free AAA environment portfolio checklist that goes over the exact things studios look for. You can download it for free, link in the description. What Crimson Desert is really doing is building vertically, not just in level design, but in how the player navigates the world. One of the biggest contributors to visual realism is atmosphere, and Crimson Desert seems to push this with a strong dynamic weather system. Weather isn't just visual, it affects lighting, visibility, mood, and then gameplay. This requires dynamic sky systems, cloud layers that change density and lighting response. Volumetric lighting. We have God rays, fog layers, distance haze. These help massive landscapes feel truly atmospheric. Material response. Rain hitting surfaces, wet stone reflections, wind affecting vegetation. These subtle changes make environments feel alive. One of the most exciting design choices in Crimson Desert is vertical exploration. Players can fly dragons, glide across landscapes, explore floating islands. Vertical traversal fundamentally changes how environments must be built. In most open world games, environments are designed to be viewed from ground level. But if players can fly, suddenly the world must work from every angle. That means artists must design rooftops, cliff tops, mountain silhouettes, large-scale terrain composition. So the world looks good even from hundreds of meters in the air, and that dramatically increases environment production complexity. Verticality changes everything. This isn't just an open world, it's a layered world. The only other game that comes to mind that explored verticality in such a manner would be The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Now, everything we've looked at so far, the scale, the biomes, the cities, none of this works without the technology behind it. And this is where Crimson Desert becomes really interesting. Because this isn't built in Unreal Engine. This is running on Pearl Abyss' own proprietary tech, the BlackSpace Engine. And you can feel that this engine was built specifically for one thing: rendering massive, dynamic worlds with a high level of physical simulation. Take the water, for example. This isn't just a shader with animated normals, it's a full simulation system. You get waves interacting with the shoreline, filling cavities, reacting to terrain. It behaves like a volume, not just a surface. And as an environment artist, that changes everything, because suddenly your terrain design directly affects how water moves through the scene. You can also tell that this gets activated only when the player gets near, and deactivated when the player is far from the water. Same thing with the atmosphere. The game uses volumetric fog with simulation, meaning it's not just visual, it actually reacts to movement and light. And combined with atmospheric scattering, you get these large-scale lighting gradients, where sunlight, haze, and distance all blend together naturally. That's what gives those wide shots that almost cinematic depth. Then you have simulation systems like cloth and hair. And again, this isn't just for characters. It ties into the environment. Wind affects everything: fabric, vegetation, movement, creating a world that feels consistently reactive. Most plants and bushes are also affected by the player's contact. Now that's a new level of immersion that is not seen too often, let alone in a game that big. Very interesting case, we have an anonymous former Pearl Abyss engine team developer who shed some light on the development of the game. He's saying that the production took 7 years, mainly because they overhauled the engine every single year to optimize performance and push more polygons. As an example, he's saying that instead of the traditional method of optimizing through culling, which means not rendering what's not seen, the BlackSpace Engine actually deletes the vertices. Because even if the traditional method works well, the assets that are not rendered are still computed at a much lower cost, but still, they can be rendered again when the player moves. So deleting vertices is going much further into that same logic. He's adding that they tried new methods to shift tasks typically handled by the CPU over to the GPU. To summarize, they were completely obsessed with performance. Also, the whole reason they built an in-house engine was to churn out massive amounts of content with a small team. Now, we don't know the exact number of developers who worked on the game, but we know that the content in this game is absolutely massive. And every time a studio is using a proprietary tech, it's for very specific reasons. Some things that they cannot find with Unreal Engine. Lighting is another big one. The engine uses ray-traced global illumination, calculating how light bounces across surfaces in real time. But what's interesting is that it's not fully dependent on ray tracing. Even without it, the engine still computes lighting in real time, which is why the world holds up across such a massive scale. And when ray tracing is enabled, that's where you start to see the difference, especially in scenes with fire, rain, or indirect light. And this is really the key idea here. All of those systems, water, fog, simulation, lighting, they're not isolated features. They're all feeding into the same goal: making the world feel alive at every scale. And when you combine that with the verticality we talked about earlier, you don't just get a big world, you get a world that feels like it's constantly in motion. If you're learning from these videos but struggling to put everything together into a full environment, that's exactly why I built my full course. You'll build the entire scene step by step in real time, understanding composition, scale, materials, and lighting, so you can apply the same process to your own worlds. These environments were created by students using the same workflow you'll learn here. It's designed for artists who already know the basics and want to create portfolio level work, not just isolated studies. This isn't about learning tools, it's about learning how professionals build environments. If that's where you're trying to get to, you can check it out in the description. Another interesting design philosophy here is how the game presents side activities. Instead of filling the map with icons and tasks, Crimson Desert includes things like camp building, preparing meals for getting buffs, growing vegetables and fruits, farming, sending remains on missions that will affect the world, fishing, hunting, delivery missions, fistfights, gambling game, bounty hunting, hot air balloon, gathering resources, crafting, alchemy, horse taming, horse racing, arm wrestling, archery competitions, and many, many more. These activities feel more like discoveries than checklist items, which reinforces a key idea: chore list. It's not just a long laundry list of things to do and objectives to complete. Note that Crimson Desert was originally planned as an MMORPG. Plans changed along the way, and it is now a single player game, but we have all these features that are generally part of MMO games. And this brings us to something bigger happening in the industry right now. Over the past decade, many Western AAA open world games have converged on a very similar structure: large maps, dozens, sometimes hundreds of activities, and progression system that essentially asks players to clear the map. You reveal an area, icons appear, and the experience slowly turns into a long list of chores. Climb the tower, synchronize the viewpoint, clear the outposts, complete the quest marker, collect the item, rinse and repeat. From a production perspective, this approach makes sense. It gives designers a predictable structure. Players always know what to do next, and it helps studios guarantee dozens of hours of content. But there's a trade-off. When the map becomes a list of objectives, exploration often stops being curiosity-driven and starts becoming task-driven. You're not wandering because the world is interesting, you're wandering because there's another icon waiting to disappear. The design philosophy appears very different. Instead of emphasizing map completion, the game seems built around spectacle and discovery. Huge landscapes that invite traversal, vertical exploration with dragons, mechs, and gliders, dynamic weather systems constantly reshaping the atmosphere of the world, cities that feel dense and alive rather than just functioning as quest hubs. These aren't presented as a giant checklist. They feel more like things you discover while wandering the world. And that difference is subtle, but incredibly important. Because when exploration is driven by curiosity instead of objectives, the world starts to feel less like a game board and more like a place. From an environment art perspective, that shift is huge. When worlds revolve around icons, environments often become backdrops for activities. Landscapes need to guide players naturally. Landmarks become navigation tools, and environments have to visually pull players deep into the world. And that kind of world design requires an enormous amount of environmental ambition. If Crimson Desert delivers on the ambition we've seen so far, it might become one of the best examples of curiosity-driven open-world design in years. Think about Zelda Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring. From an environment artist's perspective, Crimson Desert is shaping up to be something really special. Huge biome diversity, clean and distinctive architecture, massive cities, dynamic weather, vertical exploration, and a world clearly built around adventure and curiosity. If the final game delivers on even half of what we've seen so far, this might become one of the most impressive open worlds of this generation. And honestly, as a gamer, I can't wait to explore it. If you're an environment artist watching this and you want to build worlds like this one someday, I actually put together a free AAA environment portfolio checklist. It breaks down exactly what studios look for when hiring environment artists: portfolio structure, presentation tips, art station tips, what really matters for studios. If you're building an environment art portfolio right now, you can download it for free. Link in the description. And if you enjoy deep dives into AAA environment art and world design, subscribe, because there are a lot more credible game worlds worth breaking down. And a quick thank you to the members supporting the channel. Your support helps make these videos possible.